Hi, I'm Ben,
And I'm Ernie.
and this is Budget Nerds.
What was all in your mind?
You are not alone.
No, you are not. Well, Ernie, today we're going to talk about trade-offs. Budgeting is all about trade-offs. You can have this or you can have that, right? And it's about making decisions about what you're going to take and what you're going to not take, right? That's what budgeting is all about. And we've been talking about this a lot. If you listen to any Jesse's podcasts, he's really been going in on this idea of trade-offs, especially when he talks about Rule 1, because that's really what it's all about. Whenever you're allocating finite resources, you have to make a choice, right? You have to say, I'm going to take this and I'm not going to take this, and you're making trade-offs every single time. So whenever you're allocating money in your budget, that's exactly what you're doing. So we wanted to kind of dig on that.
And I think this is going to be a really interesting topic because everyone's trade-offs are different, right? What you would do with $100 is totally different than what I would do, and then what all the other budget nerds in the community would do too. So it's going to be interesting to walk through how we make our own trade-offs, just that process, and maybe how that process has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
And then just kind of go through the rules and working in trade-offs with each rule. Okay, but before we dive into trade-offs, we need an update, Ben, because we ended last episode with that special YNAB win. Ben finally bought a refrigerator. Ben and Caitlin. What happened?
Yes. Okay, we bought a fridge, but you might have noticed, those of you that watch on YouTube, Ernie put up like a stock photo of a refrigerator from Home Depot, not our actual refrigerator that is in our actual house, because it's not in our house. We've had a bit of a customer service nightmare debacle in the delivery of our fridge. They brought it here. They couldn't get it through the door. They said they were going to take the handles off, and we gave them permission to take the handles off, but they left instead. It was weird. Anyways, I've been on the phone several times with Home Depot. They say, I saw this meme one time. By the time you're in your 30s, you're in like a blood feud with either Lowe's or Home Depot, right? And I'm sure Home Depot's great, most of the time. For me, though, my blood feud is with Home Depot. But I bought it at Home Depot instead of Lowe's because it was like $400 cheaper at Home Depot. They had like a sale. At this point, I'd pay $400 just to get that fridge in the house because it's coming. It's just gonna be a while. It's gonna be another week. So maybe the next time we record Budget Nerds, I'll have it. Hopefully,
I've
knock on wood.
honestly felt bad about this situation because I've been joking like something's gonna go wrong, right? Actually, I wasn't thinking something actually would. I was just joking about it. Now everything is going wrong.
It's like the universe is against me getting this refrigerator. It's terrible.
As I was editing that last episode, I kept kind of like bugging you. Hey, can you get me a picture of the fridge in your house? And then, you kept telling, it's not happening. We got this going on.
And I had to be like, well, I would love to give you a refrigerator or a picture of my refrigerator.
Yeah, and it got to the point too where I'm just like, okay, I think something else is going on here. Let's just you'll tell me when it's in there. I'll get that picture later on. And
I will say though that we took I moved the refrigerator out as part of this process, and I can confirm now with my own eyes there is no water damage under the refrigerator, because a lot of you guys have been really concerned about what I called leaking. It's really just like condensations coming out of the front of the refrigerator because the seal isn't working. Anyways, it's fine. It was dry as a bone in there. It was just a lot of dust, a whole lot of dust, and some random kids' toys back there. So
all right.
There you go.
Well, we look forward to that fridge finally finding a home at your place. But honestly, we're going to lose a lot of material once you actually do get that fridge, because that was a filler for
what are we going to talk about?
Yeah, so many episodes.
I mean, we've been talking about this refrigerator now for like 5 minutes at least. So, I mean.
All right, that's enough.
There'll be something else.
About the refrigerator.
All right, we'll get it though. Don't worry.
we'll move on.
So back to trade-offs.
Yes, we'll
Back
talk
to
about
trade-offs.
trade-offs here. And you have this note here in Notion about opportunity cost.
Oh, yeah. So we use the word trade-offs, but I thought since this is budget nerds, we can get nerdy. When you could use the economic term, which is the concept of opportunity
So
cost.
we have Professor Ben in the house now.
So what is opportunity cost? So, you think about like when you're trying to buy something, you think about the cost of the thing, but it's not just the actual cost of buying something. It's also it's part of the cost of spending money on something is losing the opportunity to spend that money on something else. That's called opportunity cost, right? So if I have $100, I could spend it. I mean, you see this all the time in our culture, right? Be like, oh, you could spend $100 at Starbucks, and you go, yeah, but you're not gonna be able to retire because you lost the opportunity to spend that $100 on some investments, right? And if you had, you would have they would have turned into $1 bajillion in 10 years, right? That's an example of opportunity costs, right? And so that's what we're doing here.
And we do this in all areas of life, right? I got 1 free hour available on Saturday. I want to take a bike ride, and I also want to rake the leaves. I can't do both, right? I have to pick and choose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the cost of going on the bike ride is not raking your leaves. It's having a yard that's unraked, right? So that's the cost. So when we make these decisions about how we want to spend our money, we're not just thinking about how much it costs in dollars. We're thinking about it in how much it costs in opportunity. So that's what a trade-off means. So I thought we could go through the rules and we could talk about how this concept of opportunity cost or trade-offs kind of makes its way into the YNAB method all the way through.
Yeah, and this is going to be really good because as I was prepping for this episode, I realized I day to day don't think a whole lot about trade-offs, but it's ingrained in me. I'm doing it subconsciously. And so I had to kind of bring myself back to when I first started YNAB, because that's where the trade-offs hit me smack in the face. And I was like, oh, I see what's going on here. Finite resource. I can only do so many things with that resource.
Yeah, that's all budgeting is. It's anytime you have a finite resource, you have to. It's not like you don't make these trade-offs. Everybody makes these trade-offs all the time with their time, with their energy, with their attention, with their money. But when you're budgeting, when you're using YNAB, it's just making those trade-offs visible, making you very aware of what you're trading off. And that's the key difference.
Yeah, and we'll get into this too, but I was realizing when I was using my spreadsheet, I'm sure I was making trade-offs there, but they were never visible. So they never had any, importance, or I didn't get anything from those trade-offs with that spreadsheet, but we'll get into that as we go through the rules here.
Yeah, let's talk about rule 1. This is the easiest one, I think. It literally is just because rule 1 is allocate your finite resources, right? Allocate your money. Give every dollar a job, right? And when you give a dollar one job, you can't give it another job. And so, I think this is the core concept. Trade-offs is the core concept around rule 1.
Yeah, and once you give every dollar a job too, from there it's continually reprioritizing that money. I'm going to be budgeting here in a few days for November, and when I do that on November 1st, I'm taking my best guess what that money needs to do over the next 30 days, but I know it's going to change probably within that first week. I'll have to reallocate it, but it's the same amount of money. I'm just making new trade-offs.
Mm-hmm. Do you ever do this thing, Ernie, where like you're expecting a windfall? Like you and I, like we're getting a bonus at the end of this month.
Yeah.
All the YNAB employees are. Thank you, YNAB, for that. It's nice. I guess we don't call it a bonus. We call it profit sharing, right? So we're getting profit sharing thing, I guess, this month. And have you ever done this thing where you're looking forward to getting some money and you like spend it in your head like 7 or 8 times? You know what I mean? And then you actually go and budget it and you're like, oh, that kind of didn't go as far as I thought it would.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I used to do that all the time. because during those days, I was so focused on paying off my debt. And so any kind of windfall, like profit sharing, would primarily go towards the debt. And so I would just like think about it for weeks. Like, here's how much I'm going to be able to put towards this debt. Maybe I'll put a little extra towards this debt. Here's what that new balance will be. Here's how much time I'm going to cut off. Here's when I think I'll end up paying this off, all my debt off now, and that date. And so, but now, the only debt I have is the mortgage, and I'm not concerned about paying that off. I'm not trying to pay that off anytime sooner. And so I don't think much anymore about what those windfalls are going to do. Is that weird?
Well, good for you, Ernie, because I still do this. Like I'm, it's almost impossible to not. Like if there's ever an argument for entering money before it actually arrives, this is it. Because I'm spending this profit share in my head already, and I don't actually have it. So, and I could very easily, because I'm doing mental math and I'm just like dreaming. I could very easily spend it multiple times in my head and then get disappointed, So, yeah. And also, Caitlin is probably spending it in her head too. And we haven't talked about how we're going to use the money yet because we don't have it yet. We talk about it after we get it. Right. And so she has all these ideas too. And so we're going to come together and we're probably going to have a conflict and we're going to have to work it out, so it's just funny because like, it's almost impossible not to do this. So I'm pretty impressed that you don't.
I shouldn't say I don't. I don't as much because I have definitely made some plans.
Gotcha.
I'm like, oh, I think I can do this and this, but also I know, same with you. I want to involve Christy here, and I know there's some things she might want to do with that windfall, and so yeah, we'll have a conversation about it.
Yeah, it's one of those things. But yeah, that's just an example of trade-offs. If you're doing all this in your head, it's very easy to kind of spend the same money more than once in your head. And then when you actually go to spend it, it only goes so far and you're disappointed, right? Now, the same thing happens when you're budgeting, but at least it's not happening when you're actually spending. You don't actually get yourself into trouble because you plan your spending ahead of time. So that's really the key thing here.
All right, rule.
One way or the other, you're gonna have to deal with the trade-off, right?
Yes,
it's best to deal with it before you actually spend.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. I mean, there's no harm done when you're spending that money in your mind, but you actually go ahead and give that money to someone before the money arrives. Then who knows what'll happen between spending and actually landing in your checking account? So,
exactly.
All right, rule 2: embrace your true expenses. And so this is trading a little bit of pain now for a lot of pain later, right?
Yeah. I think that this is you talked about this concept of rule 2 was really huge for you when you first started because you experienced all this pain. You talked about how like Christmas, you'd always end up having to use a tax refund to pay for it, and so you're having all this pain or something else like that, right?
Yeah, water bill, $150, $100 water bill. Boy, I got to scramble to come up with that money because I don't have anything set aside for it.
Yeah, the water bill is a perfect example. Yeah. So like there's no avoiding the pain of having to pay for these things that you don't really want to pay for, right? These things that come up that are expensive that aren't part of your regular routine, right? No avoiding it. The pain is going to be there. But all rule 2 is doing is spreading out that pain so you don't feel it quite as much over a lot of months, right? Over a longer period of time. So you don't have to get that big gut punch when you get that big bill that you weren't expecting. Right?
But you still do feel a little bit of pain when you're setting aside money now for that future expense. And I vividly remember this when I started YNAB. I don't know what the amount was. Say I was contributing $250 per month to true expenses. Well, up until that point, that was $250 that I would spend on something else that month. And it was probably stupid stuff, eating out or, some of my hobbies and whatever.
And stuff that's not as important to you as like having water and running in your house, right?
Not nearly as important. So I remember right away, okay, I'm planning for these future expenses, but man, I'm feeling that little pinch right now today. But then it was all worth it once I actually started paying for those true expenses when the car would break down 6 months later. Oh my goodness, I actually have money to pay for this in cash. This is amazing.
Yeah. And it allows you to follow rule 1 better because you're actually making trade-offs. You're making trade-off decisions with more knowledge of how much money you actually really have available to you to kind of allocate in a discretionary way, if that makes sense. I mean, we talk about this all the time when we're talking about paying off debt. We really harp on people like, don't throw all your money, all your discretionary money at your debt. Put some money aside for these rule 2 expenses, these non-monthly bills and expenses, because you don't want to get in a situation where you're yo-yoing back and forth between paying off debt and then having to go back into debt when your car breaks down, right? And people feel the pain of that because they're like, oh man, look at this, I can put $1,000 a month to the debt, or whatever the amount is, and I can really knock this out fast. But rule 2 is acknowledging that actually I don't have as much discretionary money as I probably think I have because I have all these things I'm not thinking about, right? And so it is a little bit of pain right now, and that's why it's hard to get people over that hump, because it's like, hey, acknowledge the pain, acknowledge it, and feel it right now by allocating money to it and having less to put toward other things, so that you don't have as much pain later. And once you feel it, once you experience it, it's amazing, but it's kind of a hard sell right in the moment sometimes.
It really is. But yeah, like we've said, so worth it.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to rule 3. This is obvious because rule 3 is just rule 1 again, right? And you kind of touched on this already. Allocating that finite resource is a continuous process. And rule 1 is just deciding on those trade-offs. Rule 3 is just getting more information and making a different decision about those trade-offs, right?
Absolutely. And I was not doing that with my old spreadsheet, because I've always been trying to go back to that and figure out, why did that not work? And I think it was because of rule 3. So I was, okay, here's my income for the month. And that would be forecasting those expenses, or forecasting my income, with the fixed expenses there, and trying to get those to come out even, right? Income equals expenses. So 0 at the end of the month. And then I would track my spending. And I would always end up spending more than what came in for the month. And I always felt very defeated by that. And I think it's because I was never, ever making any trade-offs. I mean, I could see in the spreadsheet, boy, I've spent a lot of money on groceries or eating out this month. Or, we had to pay the water bill, and so that wasn't planned for. But then I wouldn't change anything else. It was more of just I really hope things work out for the better, or I would try to keep it top of mind, hoping that would influence future decisions. But I wasn't actually making a trade-off.
It's more about reporting. I mean, I had this experience with Mint where it was like, because with Mint, you didn't, and this is how a lot of, I wouldn't even call it budgeting methods. It's really, it's a way to pay more close attention to your money, but it's not really budgeting because you're not doing it zero base, where you really just set spending limits on certain categories, right? And then when I was using Mint, it'd be like, all right, at the end of the month, it's like, you overspent massively on dining out again. And it's like, give it another try next month. That was as far as you could go. But yeah, with YNAB and with rule 3, you actually make the trade-off. You actually move money from another category, and you actually say, because I made this decision, I can't make this decision, right? Yep. And you actually acknowledge how finite your money is. We talked about, we're talking about overspending there and covering overspending, which is a huge part of rule 3. That's making the trade-off after the fact. But with the idea of find the money first, that's a concept that we talk about a lot, where you actually make that trade-off before you spend, and you actually give yourself the opportunity to not make that trade-off, right? That's absolutely key. Before you actually buy something, if you don't have enough money to buy it when you check your budget, you can move money from another category, and then you're making the trade-off with your eyes wide open, and you have the opportunity to say no.
Very powerful. But I have a confession.
Oh,
I've found that as the buffer increases over the years in the budget, it's less likely that I'm going to find the money first. That's just kind of what I've been doing.
This is a thing. Yes.
Right? I have more wiggle room. I have more breathing room. I know I have plenty of money. Right? So I'm not going to stress out about this $20 extra at the grocery store. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but maybe it is wrong for me. I don't know.
It's just like a mind hack thing. I mean, yeah, this is totally a thing. Like when you're first starting, if you're truly paycheck to paycheck, having cash overspending on your budget could mean like you overdraft, right? It's like really intense. So, but if maybe you come into YNAB with a little more money, or maybe you've been using YNAB, and because you're using YNAB, you're going to get pretty cash rich because, you know, cash is king in YNAB, right? That's really, we're always hanging on to cash as much as we can in a lot of ways. And you start to have this buffer where you're getting a month ahead, you're saving for these true expenses. You have a lot of cash lying around. And so you're like, is it really that big a deal if I have $20 overspending in groceries, right? And for me, this is something I have to push against too. I just have to like almost pretend like I'm closer to the edge than I am when I make those decisions, because there is a lot of power in going ahead and making the decision and making a trade-off, right? And sometimes it even results in more work in the software, which, you know, if we're budget nerds, we kind of like it, but it does result in, you know, actually taking care of something and then paying yourself back. If you'll let me keep talking, Ernie, I had an experience like this recently, because we've had a
share yours, because I know what's going to happen this weekend. I have this experience too.
So we've had a bunch of overspending this week for a lot of reasons. We just had like a lot of home maintenance stuff happen. Our dryer broke, so that was great. At the same time, my kids had lice. Okay, so broken dryer, kids have lice, right? And it was the worst thing ever. So I spent like $75 at the laundromat the past like week and a half. It's just like that's 2 weeks or so. And so we had I had overspending in sundries. I had overspending in because of the laundromat. I had overspending in home maintenance because there's some other things that we had to deal with. We bought a new faucet, anyways, the whole thing. And I also broke down and actually had a repair person come and look at the dryer because I fixed it. I fixed the dang dryer myself. Yes, I know how to do things. I got a YouTube video. I replaced the heating element. It was awesome. And then it broke again. And I was like, I don't want to do that again. So I called the repairman. But, you know, a good repairman's hard to find. He couldn't come for like a week. So we've been going to laundromat. Anyways, so he came. He fixed it yesterday. He's a very nice man. He came and fixed my dryer and gave me a very reasonable price, and I was like, yes, thank you. I was like crying, like, yes, I'm like writing the check, like, this is wonderful. I'll pay you $1 million. He fixed my dryer. He also noticed another issue that would have been a problem. So anyways, very nice guy. And why am I saying all this? Anyways, I had a lot of overspending, and I was thinking about that. Another thing, I've been traveling a lot. We just had this YNAB gathering, so I had some overspending in my travel category that's going to be reimbursed by YNAB. We're going to get a reimbursement because I was traveling for YNAB. So I had overspending there, and I'm just like, okay, I could leave all this overspending until I get another paycheck, or I could go ahead and cover it now, right? And I decided to go ahead and cover it now, and I actually used some of my prudent reserve, my emergency fund, which I don't do that very often, but like a lot of other categories are tapped out, and I'm just like, I'm just going to take it from there. And the funny thing is I am going to go back and replenish that prudent reserve, that emergency fund.
Okay.
But I just decided like it's a good idea to go ahead and cover it now, just almost for the principle of the thing, but also because I'm actually acknowledging that I did indeed have to make these trade-offs, and I didn't take it all from emergency fund. I took it from lots of different categories too. So I just think there's a lot of power in almost pretending like you're actually closer to the financial edge than you really are, and go ahead and cover that overspending. And it might mean that you replenish some of those categories later, and that's fine, but just go ahead and cover it now, just so you go through that exercise continuously of making those trade-offs. So anyways, long story short, cover the overspending. It's powerful. It really is.
Now I'm curious, because we're talking about finding the money first, and you did it after the fact, which totally acceptable. But do you think you would have made any different decisions? For example, if you're thinking, I'm going to need $75 for the dryer machines, or at the, what do you call those places? Where do you go and do laundry? Laundromat. There we go.
Yeah.
If you saw, oh my goodness, $75, that comes from prudent reserve. That hurts taking the money out. Would you have done something different, like hang your clothes yourself or dry them with a,
Well, we did do a lot of hanging clothes, and I'm still dealing with crinkly. You ever like hang dry your clothes and they're all crinkly? You know what I mean?
Ben, I have I have a dryer story myself. I'll save it for a different episode, but I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. But basically, because I got 4 kids, I mean, like the laundry is insane. So like you can only hang clothes so many places. Oh my gosh, it's wild. But yeah, so we did a little of both. I wouldn't have made a different decision, because I've washed the whole house on that lice day. Like everything in the whole dang house was washed. Like it was.
Yeah.
I'll show you a picture. I can send you a picture. You can put it on the YouTube about of the amount of laundry. This is just like a portion of the laundry that I had at the laundromat that day. And so it would just take forever to. There's not enough places in my house to hang all the sheets that I washed. It's like impossible. You know what I mean? So yeah, no, I wouldn't have made a different decision. And I did have that thought. I'm like, I had a bunch of money in sundries, but I'm like, we're gonna need to move money there.
Yeah.
But I think because I didn't know how much it was going to be, that's why I waited until after the fact and then dealt with it. But it might have given me more peace of mind to go ahead and move the money ahead of time. So
I think I want to get back in the practice of moving money more before I spend, because I think it would impact some of my decisions, especially when it comes to groceries. So I was just looking at the budget. We have one shopping day. I have one shopping day left in October, this Saturday. I have $32.84 left in groceries for the month.
Okay.
I'm anticipating spending $225 or $250. Okay. And this is the way it's been going up to this point. I just spend on like it's a normal grocery week, right? So I kind of just plan normal meals, normal snacks, get all the food, whatever the bill is. I just make it work after. And so it's basically like I have no limits with the grocery list. But if I really took this seriously and tried to find the money first, well, I'm going to feel that pain. No, I don't want to take from this category. No, I don't want to take from that category. Okay, that's it. We're eating rice and beans for the rest of this week to get us through the month of October, right?
You might start getting creative, right? Well, that's the thing. Like, if you just say, screw it, I'm going to overspend, the amount that you could spend is like infinite.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Because you're just like, I'll deal with it later. You don't actually know what you're going to be giving up, right? And so you might end up spending more. Like maybe at the laundromat, if I actually had to move the money ahead of time, maybe I would have hung more clothes out to dry, or maybe I would have tried to cram a little more into one thing, been a little bit less loosey-goosey about how many, or like maybe I could like, because you put the quarter in and it like gives you 4 minutes, and you put the quarter in and gives you another 4 minutes. Maybe I could have like timed it a little better. There's a lot of things I could have done to make it a little tighter. But because I said, just forget about it, I'll cover it later, I didn't worry about it, So, and which I think is fine because we're in a crisis, so you got to give yourself a little grace.
Right. So yeah, I mean, I've been complaining a lot over the months about rising costs of, especially in the grocery category. And I got my teenage boys who eat those goldfish, like they're candy. And then plus trying to change the budget around. I think I also need to add in this finding the money first. I think that's going to just give me this sense of control, a little bit more sense of control that I'm looking for.
Yeah. Yeah. So bottom line, find the money first is very powerful. And even if you're pretty far ahead and you have a lot of money in the checking account, go ahead and cover the overspending now, just so you can do the exercise of making that trade-off ahead of time. So that's a lot of power there.
All right, rule 4, age your money. Definitely trade-offs here, right? You're giving up spending now, opportunities right now for peace of mind, more breathing room in the future. How is this different than rule 2 in terms of trade-offs? Do you see it?
Yeah, I think it's different what you're buying. With rule 2, you're buying, well, I guess you're buying similar things. I guess with rule 2, what you're buying is like avoiding a whole lot of pain all at once. With rule 4, what you're buying is peace of mind, like you said,
True.
but also more space to make decisions, right? So like if something goes wrong, that's bigger than like a particular expense.
Like a job loss.
Yeah, like a job. Yeah, that's probably the best example, right? You just have more space. I mean, Caitlin lost her job at the end of May, and because we were a month ahead and because we had saved for other things, we just had all this space, all this time for her to find a new job, and we'd be okay, you know? And I think she got a better job because of that. Like she negotiated more. I feel like, you know, if you're kind of desperate going into a job interview, everybody kind of knows it, you know what I mean? She could be more confident going into a job interview, you know? So it really gives you a lot of power. I think it's hard for folks to make this trade-off because it's kind of a hard sell sometimes because you're giving up something that's really tangible, like cash money that I have that I could use for something else. Yeah, a lot. For something that's really intangible, we're talking about peace of mind. We're talking about space to make decisions, right? And it's kind of like rule 2. Until you actually experience it, it's hard to value it. You know what I mean? So we're kind of always going to be in like, please trust me, having this space is going to be really, really powerful, but you gotta experience it to really know. So I think that's our challenge as teachers at YNAB is to really kind of make this compelling and show how compelling it is, even though you might not really know for sure until you experience it.
Yeah, as I was thinking through rule 4 in terms of trade-offs in my own life, I realized once I got that month ahead, I have never brought that month ahead onto the decision table. Like it's always been like, I'm not even going to consider that for something else.
I do that all the time where I'm like, I cover overspending. Like I have money sitting in next month. I could draw money from there to cover overspending now, but I always try to cover overspending at least as much as I can in the current month. Or when I'm finding the money first, I move money from within the current month because I don't want to touch that money that's ahead.
Yeah.
Because it's valuable. It's giving me something, you know, it's giving me this intangible, powerful thing, which is peace of mind and space for decisions. So it's huge.
All right. Well, those are the 4 rules and talking about trade-offs within each rule. Anything else you want to add to this trade-off discussion, Ben?
Yeah. I was just thinking about like, what are some other trade-offs that I've made? Like how do I make these decisions and you know, what are some of like the big, I'm thinking like large, not so much like drilled down to the budget, but like what's some of the large decision-making frameworks that I have. And as I was thinking about this, I think I found one decision I have made a lot is to value cash flow over cash on hand a lot of times, right? My decision to pay off the house, really, if you're ever trying to pay off debt, this is what you're valuing. You're valuing more control over your income over the cash that you have right now, right? And this is a lot of the other things. It's like I'm taking a little pain right now to have less pain in the future, right? So like, you know, you guys know my story of when I paid off the house. I was working on it for 2 or 3 years. We had 2 more years to go. And then I got an inheritance from a family member. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I could have used that for any number of things, but I decided to take off. I decided to go for the house and finish it because I wanted that cash flow right now, right? So I had the cash. I could do whatever I wanted with the cash, but I actually valued the cash flow more, right? So I made a trade-off there. And so that's absolutely huge. And I think rule 2 decisions revolve around this a lot. I feel like you're kind of there too, Ernie, when we talked about in a previous episode, you were talking about getting to a point in some rule 2 categories where you have enough.
Yes.
And then you don't have to, and that's really nice because you can, maybe you do get a bonus or something, and you decide to park a lot of money in your car maintenance category, right? Why would you do that rather than just continuing to put money aside? It's because now the $100 you were putting to the car maintenance category is now available to you every single month, at least until you have a car repair, right? To do what you want with it, right?
Do
and
something
so
more important.
Right. Yeah. So you might value that cash flow more than the cash. And so I think there's a lot there. That's a really big trade-off. Now, sometimes there might be times where you do value spending the cash right now on a thing or on something else rather than investing in cash flow. But that's something that I can see a through line in my life. Valuing cash flow is really high. And it's not just so I can make decisions, it's so I can have more security too. I feel like a lot of what I've been trying to do is increase my margin, right? Kind of increase the amount increase the amount of money that I have coming in on a monthly basis versus the amount that I need to live my life, right? And so that involves cutting expenses, but it also involves doing these things that increase cash flow. And so when I do have like a job loss or something goes wrong, I have all this space because I don't have to, like for example, let's say I made like $4,000 a month, but I gave $2,000 of that away, right? In giving, okay? And I only lived on $2,000, including money that I saved for retirement or whatever, right? And then I lost my job. Well, if I was spending all of that $4,000 on myself, I would have to find $4,000 a month to continue living, right? Now I only have to find $2,000 a month to continue living, which is still really hard, but you just have more space to move. You have a little more margin in your life. And so that's what I value above a lot of things. It's about having more security and more peace, really. So yeah, cash versus cash flow. That's kind of the question there. Anything for you? Anything else? Are there any big trade-offs you feel like you made?
There's nothing big. As I was thinking through this, I realized my home maintenance category, I'm continually weighing the trade-offs in that. Any homeowner, there's always a list of projects to do, and we just kind of keep cycling through that, rearranging those priorities. So, okay, I think this money is going to do this and that. Nope, I want it to actually do this and that now.
Yeah.
And that's kind of frustrating. I don't like doing that because I want to do everything, right? I want to take down the tree. I want to fix the water problem in the bathroom. I want to do something with the exterior. I want to continue to add to the yard, but I'm going to have to do this over many, many years.
Right.
And then the other thing, and sorry to go back to coupons, but from the last episode, that's
I love the coupon talk.
Part of my life. I realized those take me away from weighing the trade-offs, because then all of a sudden my mind shifts into saving money. I'll give you a quick example. This just happened this morning. I've been cutting some expenses just because I'm like, I really don't need these things anymore. And it's been fun. It's actually been very freeing to free up that cash in the budget. And so I was going to cancel our Paramount Plus subscription. And so I signed into my account. I hit that cancel button. As soon as I did that, this little coupon popped up. Hey, we'll give you 50% off for the next 2 months if you stick with us. And I sat there
interesting
for like 2 minutes. And I'm like, do I do this? Do I do this? Because I was thinking, I'm going to save, it's ridiculous, but I'm going to save $10 over 2 months. But I'm like,
right.
Okay,
but you're also spending $10 that you don't.
That's the thing. I was not.
That you don't want to spend.
Right. Because going into that, I was like, again, we're talking really small amounts. So this is nothing that moves the budget. But I was getting excited about saving $10 a month. And All of a sudden I'm like, this is $10. I can do something else. But then, yeah, as soon as that coupon popped up, I'm like, nope. Now my brain is all excited about saving money. And so I realized what was going on. I just closed my account and I'll deal with it another day.
You know what's going on is the marketing decision there is they're creating a trade-off as you're making the decision, because before the trade-off used to be, do I want $10 to spend on something else? Do I want the opportunity cost, or do I want the service, the Paramount Plus service, right? And so as you're going to cancel, because you said I want the money more, right? So as you go to cancel, they are giving you something else. They're like, hey, you get a special price. Now you have a special price, and that's a thing that you have, right?
Yeah.
And you have to make another decision to give that up for $5 a month instead of $10 a month, right? And so that's what they're doing, is they're saying, hey, here's the thing. You have the thing now. Are you sure you want to give that up? Like, that's a trade-off, right? And it you know, it could be really, I mean, it's not like evil or anything. I think it's fine. Like it's okay, because if you willingly make this decision, actually, this is worth $5 to me. The only insidious thing is they're probably hoping that you forget about it and you continue paying $10 after the 2-month promotional period, right?
Yes.
But yeah, so that's what they're doing. They're giving you another trade-off decision, hoping that you'll change your mind, you know. So that's really interesting.
Yeah. So that's about all that I thought of when it comes to trade-offs. Did you have anything else from your list?
Yeah. I'll talk about what I wrote here was I make a lot of trade-offs when it comes to time, attention, and energy versus money. The appliance repair guy that I hired is a perfect example. I know how to fix a dryer now because I watched a YouTube video and I did the steps, and I could probably get in there. I knew it's probably, well, I knew actually, and I know now the fuse was broken in the dryer. That's the issue. That's why it shut off again. So I probably could have gone in there and fixed the fuse, but it took me like 2 hours of misery to I hated it so much, Ernie. I'm not a tinkerer. Okay. I do not enjoy that. I spent a lot of time getting in that dryer. I cut my finger, like it was gross. And it was just a pain. And I was just like, I would rather pay somebody else to do this. Right. So it's not just the time, like, it was gonna be a couple hours of me working on this dryer. It's the time. It's the energy, right? It's the attention. I don't really want to go and watch another YouTube video on how to do this, but also it's a risk, because I could do all that. I could spend all this energy and time and it's still not work because I don't know what I'm doing when it comes to fixing stuff. Right. And so I decided, okay, given the risk I'd be taking of losing that for nothing, and also given the cost of time and energy, I'm willing to spend money to do it instead. Right. And so I've gotten further and further ahead and been more secure in my cash flow situation, I've started leaning more toward trading money instead of time and energy. Right.
Yes.
So I think that's huge. Also, I think my time and energy is so much more limited now than it was when I was younger, because I have 4 kids now and I've got a lot going on in life. And so the time energy that is the part of that is discretionary is very, very small. And so I value money less than that little bit of discretionary time and energy. So I think this is probably common as you get older and life gets more complicated. You'll start valuing money less than time.
Very much so. I mean, I just had this same type of discussion with a contractor that came over yesterday to look at the moisture problem in our downstairs bathroom. And he thinks he knows what's going on. Here's what I'm going to do to fix it. You know, this is something you could do yourself. And right away I said, like, nope, I value my time a lot more. So that's why I'm bringing you out here.
Exactly.
You know, in a different season, you know, kids are growing up. I'm not stressed out about them. Maybe I'm retired. Yeah, that would totally be a project, because we're talking about regrouting the shower. I could do that in a weekend, but at this point in my life, no way.
Yeah, because I mean, you use that a weekend. It's like, well, you lose one of your precious weekends with your boys, and they're getting older, and those weekends are getting less and less. And so that there's a lot of value there. So I think a lot of folks have a lot of guilt about hiring somebody to do something, or they feel like they're not as capable, but it's not. I think take the decision away from that. It's not about your capability. It's not about your grit or anything. It's about, do I want to spend this finite resource, or do I want to spend this finite resource?
Yes.
Do I want to spend time, energy, or do I want to spend money? And it's okay to choose to spend money. That's fine.
Glad you brought up that point. That's a good one.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all I want to say about trade-offs. I'd love to hear any big trade-offs you guys have made. It doesn't even have to be about money. It could be about anything. Let us know in the comments. We'll see it.
All right. Well, let's do some YNAB wins before we sign off here. Got a couple of them for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
What was all in your mind?
All right, we have 2 YNAB wins for you. Ernie, you got the first one. Why don't you take it away?
Yeah, this is from a YNAB user that I cannot pronounce their name. I apologize. Rakikinitz.
Hey, you got it.
Okay, good enough, right? This is from the Ben and Ernie tour, the YNAB API episode. You asked for YNAB win stories, so here's one of that sort. I'm moving together with my partner in about a month, and as part of this process, we are also going to have a shared account for our shared expenses. We agreed to put a part of each paycheck to the account, but weren't sure what the amount should be. With YNAB, though, I had a pretty great knowledge how much money I was using to different things on my own. My partner doesn't have similar history of budgeting and tracking their expenses, but because I did, we were able to make a decent estimate of what we might need on a monthly basis. If neither of us had no historical data of expenses, it would have been really tricky to figure out the sum. But now we have the estimate and agreed percentage of income that will be transferred to our shared accounts. Awesome.
I love that.
That is
That's what's so
fantastic.
great.
Yeah, it's that awareness piece, right? I can make the best possible decision with a little bit more awareness.
Yeah, and without YNAB, you probably would have been. It probably would have been an argument. I mean, that's what I love about it. It just makes YNAB just is a decision-making framework for couples to talk. I mean, they both agree that they both needed to contribute to the shared expenses, right? They weren't disagreeing on that, but if they didn't have a source of truth to look at,
Yes.
right, they might have disagreed on the amount, and there would have been a conflict. So, and it's a stupid conflict because it's just it's a knowable number, right? And you don't need to be fighting about the mechanics of things. Just look at the actual reality and make a decision together. So I love that. That's so great. I have one from Jessica. Jessica wrote in on the 2-year anniversary episode. So thanks for doing that. Hashtag YNAB win. Jessica says, my husband was laid off twice this summer. Ooh, twice. Once at the beginning of June and once in the middle of August. That is awful. I hate to hear that. Nice way to bookend the season, she says. Yeah. While this obviously was not an ideal financial season, it's an understatement, Jessica, I cannot overstate how crucial YNAB was to keep stress at bay during this difficult time. Because we'd been budgeting for several months before the first layoff, we had ample reserve funds that I do not believe we would have had otherwise. Also, using YNAB allowed me to know exactly what our mandatory expenses were, and to see that we could cover all of them with my paycheck. Wow, okay. My husband starts a new job today, and I'm certainly looking forward to budgeting his next paycheck, but we don't, quote unquote, need it. Without YNAB, this summer could have been a disaster. Instead, we rolled with the punches. Love that, Jessica.
Yes.
So yeah, again, you had something to look at that told you the truth, and it just gave you a lot of peace of mind. Not only did you know you have cash lying around,
There's that
so you can
space,
handle
right?
it.
We were talking about.
There's a space, but also you can actually project. You could actually do a little forecasting, project how long that money is going to last you. What's your runway, and then you know how stressed you need to be about this job loss. So. The 2 job losses. So yeah, that's a really rough time. I'm sure it's emotional and difficult, but it didn't have to be a money problem. So that's awesome.
Yeah, congratulations. All right, folks, if you have a YNAB win, share it with us in the comments. Otherwise, budgetnerds at youneedabudget.com.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Until we see you again, happy budgeting. We'll see you all later.
See you, folks.